The Exodus of Shadows. The Tribunal's Judgment Commander David Kane stood in the observation deck of the orbital station Liberty Prime, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the alien ships gather above Earth. 72 vessels from the Galactic Tribunal hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian against the starfield. Each ship represented a different species, a different world, a different vote in humanity's trial. The verdict had come through an hour ago. Humanity was sentenced to extinction. David was 43 years old, a career military officer who had spent 20 years preparing for first contact. He had imagined diplomatic dinners and cultural exchanges. He had learned 3 alien languages. He had read every protocol manual the United Nations could produce. None of it mattered now. The tribunal had studied humanity for 18 months. They had watched Earth's history, analyzed human behavior, and concluded that humanity was too unstable, too violent, too unpredictable to be allowed to spread beyond their solar system. The vote was unanimous. 72 species agreed. Humanity must be pruned before they became a galactic threat. David's communicator buzzed. It was Dr. Maya Reeves calling from the lunar facility. Her voice was steady despite the situation. David, we have confirmation. The extermination protocol begins in 72 hours. We need to activate Dark Horizon now. David closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. Understood. Begin the sequence. May God forgive us for what we're about to do. The last Stand-Earth's governments had collapsed into chaos within minutes of the tribunal's announcement. Riots erupted in every major city. Some people demanded surrender. Others called for a fight to the end. Religious leaders proclaimed the end times. Scientists begged for more time to present new evidence. None of it would change anything. The tribunal's decision was final. Humanity had 72 hours before the orbital bombardment would begin. But humanity had one secret the tribunal did not know about. Operation Dark Horizon. 5 years ago, when first contact turned from hopeful to suspicious, a small group of military leaders and scientists had begun preparing for the worst possible outcome. They built ships in hidden facilities on the far side of the moon. They stockpiled supplies in asteroid bases beyond Mars. They created a lottery system to select who would be saved if evacuation became necessary. Everything was ready. Everything except the courage to activate it. Dr. Maya Reeves was the architect of Dark Horizon. She was a 50-year-old astrophysicist who had designed the quantum fold drives that would carry the evacuation fleet beyond the tribunal's reach. She sat in her lunar office surrounded by screens showing Earth below. Her planet was tearing itself apart. People were dying in the streets. The military was struggling to maintain order. And Maya had to make the hardest choice any human had ever faced. She activated the lottery system. 12 million people would be saved. 8 billion would be left behind. The computer began selecting names based on genetic diversity, skills, age, and random chance. There was no fair way to choose. No moral algorithm that could decide who deserved to live. Maya watched the names appear on her screen, knowing that every name selected meant dozens of others condemned to death. Her own name appeared in the list. She deleted it. If she was going to play God, she would at least have the decency to stay behind and face the consequences. But David Kane overrode her deletion. We need you, Maya. The fleet needs someone who understands the drives. You don't get to choose martyrdom. Maya wanted to argue, but there was no time. The clock was ticking. Operation Dark Horizon. The evacuation began in secret. Around the world, 12 million people received a message on their personal devices. The message contained coordinates, a time, and a single instruction. Come alone. Tell no one. Bring nothing. Most people thought it was a hoax, but enough believed it. Enough came. Transport shuttles launched from hidden facilities. They flew low, avoiding the chaos in the cities. They picked up people from designated coordinates in empty fields, on mountaintops, in desert valleys. A farmer from Kenya, a teacher from Brazil, a musician from Japan, a mechanic from Russia, a doctor from Canada. 12 million individuals, each leaving behind families, friends, and everything they had ever known. David Kane coordinated the operation from Liberty Prime. He watched the shuttle traffic on his displays, counting down the hours. 60 hours remaining. 50 hours. 40. The tribunal ships remained in position, watching but not interfering. They had no reason to suspect anything. Humanity had no faster-than-light capability as far as they knew. There was nowhere for humans to run, but they were wrong. The fleet assembled beyond Neptune's orbit where the tribunal's sensors could not reach. 300 ships in total, massive colony vessels designed to sustain thousands of people for centuries, smaller military frigates for protection, supply ships loaded with everything humanity would need to survive in deep space. And at the center of it all, the flagship Resolute, where Maya Reeves worked frantically to synchronize the quantum fold drives. The technology was experimental. They had tested it only twice with unmanned probes. The drives could fold space-time itself, allowing a ship to jump across vast distances instantly. But the calculations were complex. One error and the ships would be torn apart, scattered across dimensions, lost forever in the void. Maya ran the numbers again and again. Her hands shook as she input the final coordinates. They would jump beyond the edge of the galaxy, into the empty darkness between the Milky Way and Andromeda, a place where no one would ever find them. The price of survival. 24 hours before the bombardment, the fleet was ready. 12 million people were aboard the ships, most of them still in shock. They had left their families behind. They had abandoned their world. They did not know if they would ever see home again. David Kane addressed the fleet from the bridge of the Resolute. His face appeared on every screen in every ship. I know what you have sacrificed to be here. I know the weight of survivor's guilt will crush many of you. I know you will ask yourselves why you were chosen, and others were not. I have no answers that will comfort you. The lottery was random. Your selection was chance, but you are here now and that means something. You carry humanity's future. Every child you raise, every discovery you make, every moment you live is a victory against those who tried to erase us. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. We cannot save Earth, we cannot save the 8 billion people who remain. But we can ensure that humanity survives. We can make certain that our species continues somewhere, somehow. And perhaps one day, when we are strong enough, we can return and make the tribunal answer for what they have done. The speech did not make anyone feel better. How could it? But it gave them purpose. It gave them a reason to keep living when everything they loved was about to die. Maya Reeves watched the countdown clock. 12 hours. 8 hours. 4 hours. Earth's final moments were approaching. She thought about her sister in Berlin, her nephew in Tokyo, her parents in New York. All of them would be dead soon. She would never see them again. Never say goodbye. Never explain why she left. The tribunal began their bombardment exactly on schedule. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking major cities first. New York vanished in a flash of light. Beijing, Moscow, London, Delhi, São Paulo, all gone in seconds. The oceans began to boil. The atmosphere ignited. Earth was dying, and humanity's fleet was too far away to do anything but watch. Into the abyss, Maya gave the order through tears streaming down her face. Activate quantum fold drives. Execute jump sequence Delta 7. Maximum distance. Randomized vector. The drives hummed to life. Space-time began to bend around the fleet. Reality twisted and stretched like fabric being pulled in opposite directions. The sensation was indescribable. Every person on every ship felt their atoms being pulled apart and reconstructed simultaneously. The jump lasted 3 seconds in an eternity. When it ended, the fleet floated in absolute darkness. No stars, no galaxies. No light except what their ships produced. They had escaped beyond the edge of everything, into the void between galaxies where even light took millions of years to travel. Behind them, across an impossible distance, Earth finished dying. The tribunal's bombardment continued for 6 hours until nothing remained but a molten sphere, cooling in the vacuum of space. 8 billion people were gone. Humanity's homeworld was dead. The tribunal sent a message to the rest of the galaxy. The human species has been successfully pruned. The threat is eliminated, but they were wrong. 12 million humans survived in the darkness, and they would remember everything. The first-generation life in the void was strange and difficult. The colony ships were designed for long journeys, but no one had expected they would become permanent homes. Engineers worked to connect the ships together, creating a massive floating city in space. Farms were established under artificial lights. Water recycling systems were pushed to their limits. Every resource was carefully rationed. Children were born in the darkness. They would never see a real sun or walk on real soil. They would grow up on metal floors under LED lights, but they would be taught about Earth. Every child learned the names of the continents. They memorized the oceans and mountains. They watched videos of forests and deserts. They studied the history of nations that no longer existed. A new culture emerged among the survivors. They called themselves the Shadow Fleet, humanity's remnant hiding in darkness. They developed rituals to remember those who died. Every year on the anniversary of Earth's destruction, the entire fleet observed 12 hours of silence. 1 hour for every million survivors. During that time, people would speak the names of loved ones lost: mother, father, sister, brother, friend. 8 billion names that would take lifetimes to recite. David Kane became the first admiral of the Shadow Fleet. He established the principle that would guide humanity for the next 500,000 years. We survive. We adapt, we remember, and one day we return. The oath of return. Maya Reeves lived for another 70 years before age finally claimed her. In that time, she trained a new generation of scientists and engineers. She taught them how to maintain the quantum fold drives. She showed them how to harvest energy from quantum fluctuations in empty space. She passed on everything humanity would need to survive in the void. Before she died, Maya recorded a message for future generations. To those who come after us, know this: we did not choose to run. We did not abandon Earth willingly. We were forced into darkness by those who feared what humanity might become. But fear is a two-edged sword. The tribunal feared our potential, so they tried to destroy us before that potential was realized. Instead, they gave us time. Time to grow, time to evolve, time to become exactly what they feared. When you are ready, when humanity is strong enough, go back. Return to the galaxy. Find the tribunal, and make them understand that some species cannot be erased. Some fires cannot be extinguished. Humanity is one of those fires. The message was played for every generation that followed. Children heard it. Adults repeated it. The elderly whispered it with their final breaths. The oath became part of humanity's identity. They would return. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. In the darkness between galaxies, the Shadow Fleet began its long transformation. They had all the time in the universe, and they would use every second of it to prepare for the day when humanity would remind the galaxy of a simple truth. We do not forgive, and we do not forget. 450,000 years would pass before that day arrived. But it would come. The tribunal had made certain of that. The Return of Ghosts Awakening. After eternity, Admiral Kira Osuji opened her eyes and gasped as the suspension fluid drained from her chamber. Her lungs burned as they filled with air for the first time in 2,000 years. The medical pod hissed open and she stumbled forward, catching herself on the metal railing. Her body felt young, perhaps 30 years old, but her mind carried memories spanning tens of thousands of years. She had been born 87,000 years after Earth's destruction. She had lived in cycles, awake for decades, asleep for centuries, watching humanity evolve across the ages. A medical technician helped her to a chair. The technician was a voidborn, a human subspecies adapted for deep space. His skin had a faint bluish tint. His eyes were larger to capture more light, and his fingers were longer, more precise. Welcome back, Admiral. You have been in suspension for 1847 years. The Council has requested your immediate presence. Kira nodded, still adjusting to consciousness. She had volunteered for extended suspension because the mission required someone who understood the old ways, someone who still remembered why humanity hid in the darkness. She dressed in her uniform, black with silver trim, bearing the symbol of the Shadow Fleet, a phoenix rising from ashes. As she walked through the corridors of the flagship Eternal Resolve, she saw how much had changed. The ship was massive now, more like a floating city than a vessel. Thousands of people lived here, working, studying, raising families. But despite the centuries that had passed, everyone still knew the stories. Everyone still remembered Earth. Kira entered the council chamber where 7 other admirals waited. They represented different branches of humanity's evolution. Admiral Thomas Vance was a combat variant, standing 7 feet tall with reinforced bones and enhanced reflexes. Admiral Chen Li was a quantum mind, her consciousness partially existing in digital space. Admiral Raj Patel was a baseline human, unmodified, representing the original genetic line. Together they commanded a fleet of 50,000 ships and a population of 900 million souls. Admiral Osuji, Chen Li said, her voice echoing slightly as if speaking from multiple places at once. The reconnaissance mission has returned. They have data from the Milky Way. You need to see this. What we've become before reviewing the data, Kira took a moment to walk through the habitation sectors of the Eternal Resolve. She needed to see what humanity had become during her long sleep. The transformation was remarkable. Humanity had not simply survived in the void. They had thrived and evolved in ways that would have seemed impossible to the original survivors. The agricultural sectors were vast hydroponic gardens, stretching for miles, growing food under artificial suns that mimicked Earth's lost light. Children played in parks built inside hollowed asteroids, their laughter echoing in spaces that had never known natural gravity. Schools taught children about planets they had never seen, oceans they would never swim in, and a homeworld that existed only in historical records. Technology had advanced beyond anything the old Earth could have imagined. Humanity had perfected genetic engineering, not to create something new, but to adapt to their environment. Some humans became stellar adapted, capable of surviving in hard vacuum for hours. Others became nano-enhanced, their bodies infused with microscopic machines that could repair damage and extend life. Still others became psi-touched, their brains rewired to process quantum information directly. But the most significant advancement was temporal manipulation. Humanity had learned to slow down time itself within localized fields. This meant ships could travel through normal space while their crews experienced only days for journeys that took centuries. It meant one person could live for hundreds of thousands of years without traditional aging. Kira herself was proof of this technology. Military development had been equally impressive. The Shadow Fleet had built weapons that defied physics, entropy cannons that could age targets millions of years in seconds, turning warships into dust, dimensional anchors that could trap entire fleets in pocket universes, singularity missiles that created miniature black holes on impact, and most terrifying of all, the extinction field generators that could sterilize all life in a solar system while leaving the planets intact. These weapons existed for one purpose: to ensure that when humanity returned to the galaxy, no force could stop them. The Tribunal had tried to prune humanity because they were dangerous. They had no idea how dangerous humanity would actually become when given 450,000 years to prepare. Kira returned to the council chamber with a heavy heart. Humanity had survived, yes, but at what cost? They had become the very thing the Tribunal feared, a species capable of unimaginable destruction. The question now was whether they would use that power for justice or revenge. The Scout's discovery. The reconnaissance data appeared on the holographic display in the center of the chamber. Captain Marcus Webb, leader of the Scout mission, stood beside it. He was a stealth variant human, his body capable of bending light around itself, making him nearly invisible. He had spent the last 50 years on a solo mission into the Milky Way, gathering intelligence while remaining completely undetected. "Admirals," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the weight of his report. "The galaxy has changed significantly since our departure. The Galactic Tribunal still exists and has expanded its authority. They now control 67% of inhabited space, representing 156 member species. They position themselves as peacekeepers and arbiters of galactic law." Shenli leaned forward, her digital eyes processing the data streams faster than anyone else could follow. "And humanity? What does the galaxy remember about us?" Marcus hesitated, then spoke carefully. "We are remembered, Admiral, but not as we were. The Tribunal has rewritten our history. According to their official records, humanity was a plague species that threatened galactic stability. Our extinction is taught as a necessary act of protection. They call it the first pruning." The room fell silent. Kira felt rage building in her chest. "The first pruning? You mean there were others?" Marcus nodded grimly. 47 other species have been pruned since humanity. The Tribunal evaluates every new spacefaring civilization. If they determine a species is too aggressive, too unpredictable, or too technologically dangerous, they eliminate them before they can spread. They call it preventive peacekeeping. Admiral Vance, the combat variant, slammed his fist on the table, denting the metal. 47 species. They've committed genocide 47 times and call it peace. 48 times, Marcus corrected quietly. "Including humanity." The memorial of Shame Marcus expanded the holographic display, showing imagery from the Sol system. Kira's breath caught in her throat. There in orbit around the third planet from the sun was Earth, or what remained of it. The planet had partially healed over the millennia. The oceans had reformed, though they were a sickly brown color. The atmosphere was breathable again, though toxic storms still ravaged the surface. No life existed there except for specially engineered bacteria slowly cleaning the soil. But the tribunal had built something on Earth's surface. Massive structures covered what had once been North America, Europe, and Asia. Cities of glass and metal, pristine and gleaming, completely unlike anything humans had built. Marcus zoomed in, showing the details. "They call it the Memorial of the Pruned," Marcus explained, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "It is the largest museum in the galaxy. Millions of aliens visit every year to learn about humanity and the other 47 species that were eliminated. They present it as educational, a warning about the dangers of unchecked aggression." The display showed alien tourists walking through exhibits. Holographic humans performed historical scenes, wars, violence, conflicts. Everything was carefully curated to present humanity as dangerous and savage. Children from 100 different species watched the displays and learned why humanity had to die. Kira watched in silence as the display showed the central monument, a massive pyramid of black stone, each face inscribed with names, 8 billion human names, every person who died when Earth burned. The tribunal had recorded them all, preserved them as a memorial to their own act of genocide. "They turned our grave into a tourist attraction," Admiral Patel whispered, his voice breaking. "They murdered 8 billion people and built a theme park on their ashes." But Marcus was not finished. He showed footage of the inner exhibits where pieces of human civilization were preserved behind glass. A violin from the Vienna Philharmonic, a baseball from Yankee Stadium, a wedding dress from Mumbai, children's toys from Beijing, books from the Library of Alexandria too, all preserved, labeled, and displayed like artifacts from an extinct species that never mattered. "There is more," Marcus said quietly. He changed the display to show a different section of the memorial. The Hall of Necessities. This is where they justify the prunings. Each of the 48 species has a dedicated exhibit, explaining why their elimination was necessary for galactic peace. Kira forced herself to watch as the display showed humanity's exhibit. Holographic presentations explained how humans were apex predators who solved every problem with violence, how human history was nothing but war after war, how humanity's rapid technological advancement made them an existential threat. The presentation concluded with the tribunal's vote, 156 species agreeing that humanity must be pruned for the greater good. The final image showed a plaque outside the exhibit. "Let us remember the hard choices we make to preserve peace. May we never forget the price of security." The tribunal's crime Shen-Li had been processing the reconnaissance data in parallel with the presentation. Now she spoke, her voice cold and precise. "I have analyzed the historical records of all 48 pruned species. Would you like to know what they had in common?" Every admiral turned to look at her. Shen-Li's expression was impossible to read, her face partially obscured by the quantum data streams flowing around her consciousness. They were all successful. Every single species that was pruned showed exceptional technological advancement, rapid adaptation, and strong cultural cohesion. None of them were actually aggressive by galactic standards. The tribunal did not prune dangerous species. They pruned competition. The implications hung in the air like poison. Admiral Vance was the first to speak. "You are saying the tribunal commits genocide not for protection, but to maintain power?" "Precisely," Chen-Li confirmed. "The tribunal's member species are all ancient, slow-growing civilizations that evolved over millions of years. They cannot compete with younger species that advance rapidly, so they eliminate the competition while claiming it is for peacekeeping. Humanity was not destroyed because we were dangerous. We were destroyed because in another 1,000 years we would have surpassed them." Kira stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, the Shadow Fleet stretched into the darkness, 50,000 ships ready for war. Behind her, the other admirals were talking, debating, planning. But Kira's mind was elsewhere. She thought about the original survivors, the 12 million people who fled Earth 450,000 years ago. She thought about David Kane and Maya Reeves, the founders who had made humanity's survival possible. She thought about the oath they had sworn. "We survive. We adapt, we remember, and one day we return." That day had finally come. The first strike the Council voted unanimously. The Shadow Fleet would return to the Milky Way, but not for simple revenge. Their mission had 3 objectives: dismantle the Galactic Tribunal, prevent future prunings, and reclaim Earth. The operation would take years, perhaps decades. But humanity had time. They had nothing but time. The first strike was carefully planned. They would not attack military targets or population centers. Instead, they would strike at the tribunal's legitimacy by revealing the truth about the prunings. Captain Webb had gathered centuries of classified data during his reconnaissance mission. The evidence was irrefutable. The tribunal had committed genocide 48 times, and every single pruning was based on fear of competition, not actual threat assessment. A strike force of 100 stealth ships entered the Milky Way. They traveled to the 50 most populated worlds in tribunal space. On each world, they infiltrated the communication networks and broadcast the truth. Uncensored historical records. Internal tribunal communications discussing which species to prune next. Secret votes where species argued not about danger but about economic competition. Everything. The galaxy exploded into chaos within hours. Member species of the tribunal began questioning their government. Some demanded investigations. Others withdrew their support entirely. Younger species that had been watching humanity's memorial now realized they might be next on the pruning list. Fear spread like wildfire and the tribunal scrambled to contain the damage. But the Shadow Fleet was not finished. On the 3-day anniversary of the initial broadcast, another message went out across every communication channel in the galaxy. This time it was personal. Admiral Kira Osuji appeared on screens everywhere, her face calm but her eyes burning with purpose. The message to people of the galaxy: my name is Admiral Kira Osuji of the Shadow Fleet. You know us as humanity, the species that was pruned 450,000 years ago. The Galactic Tribunal told you we were extinct. They were wrong. 12 million humans escaped the genocide. We have spent nearly 500,000 years surviving in the darkness beyond your reach. Now we have returned. Kira paused, letting the words sink in across 100,000 worlds. We did not return for revenge, though we would be justified in taking it. We returned to ensure that what happened to humanity never happens again. The tribunal has pruned 47 other species since destroying Earth. 47 civilizations erased because they showed potential. How many more will die before the galaxy says enough? The broadcast showed footage of the memorial of the pruned on Earth. They turned our homeworld into a museum. They displayed our deaths as entertainment. They taught your children that genocide is acceptable if you call it peacekeeping. But we remember. We remember every name. We remember every face. We remember what was taken from us. Kira's expression hardened. The Galactic Tribunal will be dissolved. The species responsible for ordering the prunings will answer for their crimes. Earth will be reclaimed and restored, and any force that attempts to stop us will learn what humanity has become during our long exile. We are not the species you destroyed. We are what you created when you tried to eliminate us. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. You feared what humanity might become. Now you will see it. We are the Shadow Fleet. We are the children of Earth. We are the species that refuse to die, and we have come home. The broadcast ended, but the message echoed across the galaxy. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. In the darkness between galaxies, the Shadow Fleet began moving toward the Milky Way. 50,000 ships carrying 900 million souls, armed with weapons that could reshape reality itself. They moved slowly, carefully, giving the galaxy time to understand what was coming. The tribunal had spent 450,000 years believing they had solved the human problem. They were about to learn their mistake. Humanity did not forgive. Humanity did not forget. And most importantly, humanity never stopped being exactly what the tribunal feared most: survivors who refused to accept extinction. Earth's children were coming home, and they were bringing judgment with them.